Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Diary. This is the part 2 of the brutal text. If you don't listen to the previous part, recommend to listen at first. So let's start the story without losing any time. You are listening the Voice of Diary. I'm 28, male, work in sales, and by the time the first week after that birthday breakup ended, I had already accepted one thing. The relationship was over. What I hadn't accepted yet was how carefully the whole thing had been planned. 3 days after she moved out, I started packing the things she left behind. Mostly small stuff, kitchen tools, a few books, random clothes she said she'd pick up later. While clearing out one of the drawers in the living room cabinet, I found a brown envelope wedged behind some old bills. At first I thought it was junk mail, but when I pulled it out, my name was on it. Not handwritten, printed. Inside were copies of bank statements. Mine, the same ones I had shared with her a few months earlier when we were applying for the apartment lease. Except these copies had notes written on them in pen, circles around my monthly income, underlines under my savings, and one sentence scribbled at the bottom, enough to cover the lease alone. I stared at it for a long time. That sentence didn't look like casual thinking. It looked like planning, and suddenly the last 2 months started replaying in my head differently. The way she insisted both our names go on the lease. The way she kept saying, "Don't worry, if anything happens you can handle it." At the time I thought it was a compliment. Now it looked like a backup plan. But the envelope wasn't the real problem. Under the statements was a printed email thread. And when I read the first line, I understood how calculated everything had been. It was an email she sent to the apartment management office, dated 2 weeks before my birthday. It said, "My boyfriend is financially stable enough to cover the full rent if necessary." My stomach tightened. She had already started laying the groundwork. Before the breakup, before the birthday text, before the Instagram post with her ex. That email wasn't about information. It was about positioning herself to leave clean while making sure the financial responsibility stayed on me. And that's when something else clicked. The last 2 months, she had stopped paying for utilities. At the time, she blamed reduced work hours. But I checked our payment history. She had been transferring money out of our joint expense account instead. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. I pulled up the numbers. Over 6 weeks, she had quietly moved nearly $4,800. Not stolen exactly. The account technically had both our names. But she never mentioned it. And the transfers lined up perfectly with when she started reconnecting with her ex. That's when I decided I wasn't going to react emotionally. I was going to react carefully. The next morning, I called the property management office. I explained that my girlfriend had moved out and asked a simple question. What are my options if the other leaseholder refuses to pay? The manager explained the reality. Since both our names were on the lease, the landlord could pursue either one of us for the full amount. But there was another option. If one tenant abandoned the unit without agreement from the other tenant, the remaining tenant could request a formal lease reassignment process, meaning the landlord would officially contact the absent tenant and demand a decision. Either stay on the lease and pay their share, or legally remove themselves with penalties. Penalties meaning termination fees. In our case, about $4,000. The manager asked me something important. "Do you want us to initiate that process?" I paused, because I knew exactly what my ex was expecting. She expected me to quietly keep paying rent, avoid drama, protect her fresh start with her ex. But the truth was simple. She didn't want financial drama. I didn't want financial exploitation. So I said yes. The property office sent her the official notice that afternoon. She called me 2 hours later, and this time she wasn't calm. "What did you do?" she demanded. I asked them to follow the lease agreement. "You're trying to trap me with fees." I let that sit for a moment, then said, "You tried to trap me with the rent." Silence. Then her tone changed. "You're being petty." "No," I said. "I'm being fair." She tried another approach. "Look, my ex and I are getting a new place soon. I can't afford penalties right now." That part almost made me smile. The timeline was moving faster than she expected. "So what's your solution?" I asked. "You keep the apartment. I'll help a little when I can." Meaning vague promises that would never happen. I replied with one sentence. No. She started getting frustrated. You make more money than me, and you moved $4,800 out of the joint account. That shut her down immediately. A long pause followed. Then she said something that revealed the entitlement I had ignored for years. I deserve some stability after everything I've been through. That line explained everything. In her mind, my stability was something she could use. And when I stopped cooperating with that idea, she didn't like it. Over the next few days, she tried a few more tactics. First, she tried guilt. You're ruining my chance to move on. Then she tried pressure. Her friends started messaging me. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? One even wrote, you should just be the bigger person. But the most interesting attempt came a week later. Her ex called me. He tried to sound confident. Look, man, we're building something together now. If you push this lease thing, it's going to hurt her financially. I asked him a simple question. Did she tell you she transferred money out of our account before leaving? Silence. Then he said, that's between you two. Exactly. Which meant he probably didn't know the full story. I kept my voice calm. She planned this before the breakup. More silence. Then he said something I didn't expect. That doesn't sound like her. I didn't argue, because the truth usually surfaces on its own. 2 weeks later, the property office finalized the lease reassignment notice. She had two choices: stay on a lease and continue paying half the rent, or remove herself by paying the termination penalty. She chose the second option. But here's the part she didn't anticipate. The termination fee had to be paid within 10 business days. And the property office required confirmation that all joint financial obligations between tenants had been settled, meaning the shared account needed to be reviewed before closing it. That review exposed every transfer she made, all $4,800. The property manager contacted both of us for clarification. And suddenly the story she had told everyone, that she just left a bad relationship, didn't hold up very well. She ended up paying the $4,000 lease termination fee. She also had to return the money from the shared account before the account could be formally closed. Her fresh start with her ex suddenly started with nearly $9,000 in unexpected bills. Meanwhile, I kept the apartment. Not because I wanted it, but because now I could actually afford it again. The funny part? A few months later, one of our mutual friends mentioned something casually. Apparently, the relationship with her ex didn't last long. Money stress tends to reveal a lot about people. As for me, the birthday that started with a breakup text ended up teaching me something useful. If someone tries to quietly shift their problems onto you, don't react emotionally. Just make sure the consequences land exactly where they belong. And if this story reminded you that sometimes the calmest response is the most satisfying one, stick around. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell icon. Because sometimes the best stories start exactly when things fall apart.